So how have you been, my friend? It's been a long time.
Oh, I've been great. Yeah. Life is full and multicolored. And, yeah, the album's coming out in the UK and Europe in the spring.
Really?
In June. So, yeah, there's a label over there that's going to put it out. So I'm very happy about that. And I'm doing a lot of writing and, performing. So everything's good.
Sweet. I noticed that I was trying to backtrack to when I remember you first talking about this, which I didn't find the initial, but I did see it was the songs of Beulah Rowley in particular was wrapped up about 2016.
Yes. Yeah. It's a long time project. It's one of those things that, it's a story and all this. So it's something that I conceived of a long time ago. And it took a while for me to write everything. And then making the album ended up being quite a journey. And getting Hal Wilner involved was, of course,
magic.
Wonderful. Yeah. And then we had to get the funding and all that. So it's a long labor of love that's continuing.
Well, I could see this being a promo moment for you at many stages of life. Even in 10 years, you're probably still going to be talking about this. So it's probably never ending.
That's my hope, is that it can. Well, it is one of those things that you can always find new facets to it. Maybe there'll even be a Beulah doll one day. Who knows, right?
Oh, so, that'd be cool.
Yeah. So the label in England is hoping to get some interest in turning it into a play over there. So that would be nice. And yeah, it's the other thing. I've never told anyone how many songs I found.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe there's more.
Woohoo! Part 2. I would love this.
Right.
So I'm going to give a little background to my listeners. This is we usually do the Michigan Music History podcast, which is taped live in Bay City. And people come from around the state, musicians, DJs, authors that pertain to Michigan music. And I've done this I think my third. I call it the Mitten 15 from Harvest Canteen, which is my studio here in Hampton, out in Essexville, Bay City.
Nice.
And I filter this through the MMHP as like a super special thing to get people that can't get here to be on the podcast.
I love it. Mitten. I love it.
That's cool. And I was thinking when I got I got my Record Store Day album like all lined up all over my studio desk here and all my notes, and I don't know if there's anything more Michigan than this conversation we're going to have today, because you found these songs from the earliest era, and you for my listeners that aren't familiar, and I'm sure most of you are, Mary Lee Kortes, Mary Lee's Corvette, just synonymous with not just being from Michigan, but national musician legend that we love from the state. And I was lucky to meet you through Dick Wagner, in a sense, about 20 years ago. And our relationship grew as friends, as journalists and musicians, but and of course Facebook friends. But Mary Lee found these songs in this. I'm going to let her tell the story, but this is the most Michigan thing we could ever have on this podcast, I think. So go ahead, Mary Lee, take it away.
Well, I do like to, in fairness to my listeners who fall in love with Beulah, I like to introduce the story with this line. Please remember, just because I made this all up doesn't mean it isn't true.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Wow. This gets heavier and heavier. I love it.
Yeah. So the story goes that Beulah Rowley was born around 1917 in Greenville, Michigan.
Greenville.
And grew up on a small farm. And eventually her father was working in a factory during the Depression, but it closed. He opened a little theater and became beloved in the community. And through a string of circumstances, sadly, both of her parents died when she was very young. And it brought her great sadness, so she started writing songs. And then started performing them in the theater that her father had owned, and traveled around tri-state area, got somewhat regionally known there. And she stored all of her handwritten lead sheets and lyrics and diaries in this sort of quirky wrought iron piano bench that had been custom built for her grandmother.
Wrought iron.
Yeah, and Beulah inherited this bench and sat on it and composed her songs. And sadly, one night, and this is when she was in her early 20s, at this point she was married with a young daughter, a fire swept through her house, and nobody survived except the wrought iron piano bench, which made its way through flea markets and families till ending up in mine. Mm-hmm. And I was a budding musician taking piano lessons, sitting on this very bench. There was a rustling inside. We could always hear that there was stuff inside this old bench, but it had been sealed shut and we couldn't get it open. And on my 10th birthday, my father said, "Mary Lee, what do you want for your birthday?" And I said, "I want you to open this bench." So he took it to a local locksmith who did his magic and finally got the bench open. And when the lid lifted up, inside it, I saw all this handwritten sheet music and lyrics and diaries, and I was just mesmerized and enthralled. And as a young musician myself, I started figuring out her songs on the piano, sitting on her bench. I fell in love with this music and decided that I had to grow up and become a famous singer and bring her songs back to the world where they belonged. So here we are.
Wonderful. This is such a story. This is unbelievable. Yeah. Was there music as well as lyrics? Yes. Yes, she wrote out the melodies in her own hand. Goodness. And on staff paper that she created. And yeah, so it was a little faded, so I did my best to figure it all out. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Now, was there remnants of a fire on that wrought iron bench? Yes, it was a little, the edges weren't perfect anymore. So you could see that it had been through quite a bit. And, it was pretty old by the time it came to us. So. I got to ask you, before we dive into your music in this record, how did you find the backstory on Beulah? It came to me in a dream. Ah, okay. Okay. Yep. Okay. I got you. I woke up one morning. I was on tour actually in the UK, and I woke up one morning with Beulah Rowley in my head. Oh, hello. Gosh. Now this is we can, by the end of this episode, talk a little bit about your book of dreams. Mm-hmm. Yeah. With Bob Dylan. Dreams are important. Dreams have been a key in your life, and I want to discuss that later, but that's wonderful. I'm sitting here reading all this and filtering the net and, jamming the S album is just a fantastic listen, even if you didn't know what was going on. And I'm like, how does she get all this information? And I couldn't find the trigger for that, so thank you for sharing that. Sure. Well, as Beulah said in her poem, Lost and Found, which is on the record, we only own what matters. What matters is our dreams. Oh my gosh. I love this. And you titled the album, Will Anybody Know That I Was Here? Which is just, I think, any artist, poet, musician, writer, it's, you're leaving a longevity behind, but you're wondering if anybody will ever listen, read it, catch up with it. And that was even, such a strong feeling for her in the 20s, or whenever she wrote this. And it's just a great line. Everything's just so laid out perfectly. Well, somebody asked me what's the theme behind all this, and I said perhaps that you may be getting heard even if you don't know it, because everybody wants to be heard. Mm-hmm. I think. I agree. Right. Nobody wants to be ignored. Oh, excuse me, please ignore me. And it's something that we all share, and that's part of I think the
the sort of impetus behind the song, Will Anybody Know That I Was Here? That question, right?
Yeah.
Do I matter? Do I matter? Will anybody know?
Yeah.
And, Beulah did all of this incredible work. And ultimately, yes, she was heard. Even she didn't know how widely.
It is going to continue on. I love this. This is incredible. I mean, I've heard more already than what I've been able to catch up with skimming the net for stuff that I wasn't aware of. And a thing that I know we're going to go back and hear more of how this came to you at the age of 10 and writing this music all your life. But going through the liner notes of the record, I'm where I'm getting a lot of my questions from, because it's amazing. You got every detail in this vinyl record store day release. Is that you ran into your producer Hal Wilner with your husband Eric? I don't know if the listeners know, but Roscoe Amble, Eric Amble is your husband, and it's a pretty synonymous musician himself. If you want to do a little back digging, and tremendous songwriter producer. But anyway, him and the Jim Marshall, aka the Hound, were with you in New York. It says corner of Avenue B and 10th, and you were just kind of in your own dream state listening to them talk with Hal Wilner. And and needless to say, your dream came true with Hal down the road to produce this record. But Jim Marshall did some back digging, and he put more of this history of a possible Beulah together with this lady, Konstantin Popovich of Moscow. And not just that, but there's like three sides to this coin between your dream and those two things. And there's so much history for the possibility of Beulah, from burning in the fire to maybe not. To maybe not. Yeah. There's like, it's like a three-way street. So give us a little bit of how, when you found out all this detail, how this intrigued you. And I'm sure your songs were already kind of formed by then, but like, where was your heart at the time when you were hearing all this information come to light?
Well, yeah, I mean, the songs had all been written, and when Jim Marshall, the Hound, presented me with all this, with his writing, which became the sort of official liner notes, I was blown away. I was just blown away. And the thought that Beulah perhaps had not died when we thought was mind-blowing for me and wonderful. That's a wonderful thing. But maybe she lived longer.
Yeah.
We thought.
And one of a destiny that is still untold ending, and another one, and even, like you said, even worse than a fire, cannibalized.
Oh, well, yeah, let's hope not.
Yeah, I hope that wasn't.
But there's no certainty in any of it. But yeah, it's amazing what he wrote and what he found out.
I also love how he tied together some of the lyrics and the songs to thinking what was in her vision ahead, to these two possibilities. It's just, there's so much intriguing ties to this Michigan woman musician.
Yes.
Man.
Michigan rocks. Michigan rules.
I can't believe it.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Yeah. I love Michigan. Every now and then I get the pull to move back.
Do you?
Oh yeah.
Where are you in Roscoe at?
We live in Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn. Okay. Oh, so does my buddy Adam Levy. Oh, that's cool.
Oh, Eric's good friends with him. Yeah. He's been over to our house. Yeah. I didn't know you were buddies.
Yeah, he's on a couple of my records.
I don't know. He's such a good guy.
He's nice, like you. It's just that kindness. I've been blessed to be surrounded by musicians and friends that have maintained a lifetime, and just a kind heart comes through, and that's the people you want to stick with,
Yep.
Well, you guys are in Brooklyn, and you thought about moving back to Michigan. Where did you grow up in Michigan?
I grew up in Portland.
Portland, Michigan.
Which is, it's really tiny. It's on 96 between Lansing and Grand Rapids, although it's got over 4,000 people now. There were about 2,500 when I was growing up there.
Wow.
Do you know Portland?
I know of it, and I knew of it from you. I just wanted to have you document that for the listeners.
Yeah.
That's the only kind of way I know of it. It's because of Mary Lee.
Yeah, yeah.
There should be a little thing going into town saying "Home of Mary Lee Kortes." You know.
Well, one of my songs I'm most proud of is called "Portland, Michigan."
Mm-hmm.
My album 700 Miles. Yeah.
That's the album I believe you were just putting out when we first met, or had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was touring with Joe Jackson, who I just had dinner with the other night.
Ah,
we're still friends. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Very cool to hear. I love that. Yes.
Speaking of kind musician friends, yeah.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I love that you've maintained all your great touring contacts, and I don't know. It's just great to hear where you're heading with your music, Mary Lee. Got to ask you about your ties to Michigan, and what did you do when you growing up? I mean, were you performing all over the state, or how did you go about it at first?
Well, let's see. When I was growing up, I was forced into piano lessons very early on, at like when I was 5, 6, 7, and I just hated it. And that was when we were living in St. John's. We were living in Portland when I was born, then we moved to St. John's for a while because my dad had a drive-in theater there, and it was just better. Him and my mom ran it, so rather than having to drive 30 miles home at 2 in the morning after it closed, we moved to St. John's when I was about 5, and lived there 3-ish years, 3-4 years. Then moved back to Portland, and when we moved back to Portland, we moved right next door to the town piano teacher, who was named Florence Dunham, and she gave piano and voice lessons. So I started taking with her, and I actually started to really like it. And so I was studying piano and voice and doing, recitals with her. And then my mother died after about a year, and my piano playing had been very connected to her, so I lost interest and stopped playing. But I always continued to sing, and I didn't perform really in high school, but it was in my first year in college when I was hanging out with a musician friend, and he was playing guitar, and he started playing John Prine's song Paradise, also known as Muhlenberg County. And I just started harmonizing with him, and it was like this voice kind of popped out of me that I'd forgotten, or maybe I didn't really know I had. And the guy was singing with, was like, "Oh my God, you're a really good singer, beautiful voice." And so then I thought, "Oh, maybe I'll keep doing this." And then that summer I had a job up in Baldwin, Michigan at a dude ranch. It was called Wolf Lake Dude Ranch. The guy who ran it, his name was Don Doherty, and he was an aspiring musician. And people would come there for a week, and they'd stay Saturday afternoon to Saturday morning. And I got a job there as, we were called ringlets. The guys who worked there were called wranglers, and the girls were called ringlets. And we made the food and cleaned the cabins. But I mentioned to him that I sang. And so he listened to me sing, and then he asked me if I would sing with him every Saturday, because he would do a concert every Saturday night when the new guests arrived. So that's when I really started performing and feeling like, oh, I think I like this. I think I can do this.
Would this have been about mid-70s? Late 70s?
Yes, mid-late 70s, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, that's how it started. And then I finished college and moved to New York to become a book editor and a singer. They have nothing to do with each other.
But they do.
Well, yeah, I guess. Right.
You've interweaved that twine, and as a music journalist myself, as well as musician, I see the parallel universe there. Right,
especially in working with language. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you said you moved to New York in what year?
Mm-hmm. When was that? Late 70s, early 80s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you immediately find gigs out there, or what was your path back into music at that time?
It took me a while. at that point, I don't know if they still do it, but I guess they don't because the paper doesn't exist anymore. But the Village Voice would have ads for musicians, either, bands or situations that were looking for a singer or guitar player, bass player, drummer, or singers would put ads in saying, I'm looking for a band. Mm-hmm. So I started answering ads for singers and eventually hooked up with people and got into bands, and that's how I started performing.
Wow.
Was by answering ads in the Village Voice. I was so nervous. That's back when people had answering machines.
Oh,
I would get messages on my answering machine. We saw your ad, or you called us. Give us a call. And sometimes I was too nervous to call.
Right. You determine your thing depending on the voice or the situation, eh? Like
I don't. Or my mood. Like, do I feel brave today? So yeah. So that's how that started. That's how that got kicked off, and playing it in the little clubs in the West Village, because I was living in the West Village, also known as Greenwich Village, back then. Mm-hmm. And there were still some of those classic places, like Folk City still existed then. Mm-hmm. And I played at Folk City one night, and just other places around there with a guy I played with for a while. He was a songwriter. That's before I was writing songs.
Wow. Now, what was your tie with Dick Wagner then from Michigan?
Well, Dick Wagner, I didn't know him when I was in Michigan, but I did go see the Frost when I was underage. I had a few older friends. Got into the club. What was it, the Cobra Club in Hastings? Is that where they played? And Alice Cooper played there.
Nice.
And the Amboy Dukes. Nice. So that's when I first saw him, but I didn't meet him. I met him years later. He was signed to, I think, a publishing deal. My publisher knew his publisher, and somehow we were introduced, and we got together, and we got together one day. I think maybe twice we got together. And I was so intimidated. I couldn't write with him. But we became friends and had a wonderful, friendly connection. But I never could write with him. And I'm like, what an idiot. Why didn't I just suck it up and do it?
It's nerves, though. I get you.
I was,
Was that in New York?
Yes. He came to my apartment.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And then we stayed in touch, and we would email each other until, sadly, he was taken away.
Right. He introduced me to you. I was somehow your name came up. A few people I've gotten to meet over the years came up because Dick would say, "Hey, you should do that, cover that story, or do this," and I was working at WMG Records in Saginaw with him for his last 3 years there, and I was writing for the Bay State Times and the Saginaw News, and and everybody there was like, "Oh, no one's ever talked to Mary Lee. You should definitely hook that interview up." And I remember talking to Dick, and then I was in charge of some of his archives at the time, and I come across some of Roscoe's CDs and demos there, and he gave them to me before he moved out to Arizona, before he moved on, did his book, and passed away here. But I have, I think, a CD or two of Roscoe's demos that he sent to Dick. Yeah, interesting stuff. But I was like, it was such a great meeting because I got to, at the time, back when they let us cover anything we wanted, I came down and got to see you and Joe Jackson. I think we saw each other twice. I think there was another show we saw. You opened for somebody or played along with somebody else. I don't remember what it was, but I was just grateful for the connection, and I could see Dick was always somewhat intimidating by anybody that would come around. He's such a legend.
Yeah.
Well, you guys never ended up writing any songs then, and
No, isn't that's so stupid?
It happens. It happens. I got to do one time sat in with him at White's Bar here in Saginaw. I just was more like looking at my guitar than I was doing anything. It was like, I finally got to jam with my boss here, and it just fall flat on my face. It was just cool to be around and get his energy.
Yeah. And then, all the stuff, he lived in New York for a long time before I was here, and did all that work with you know, he just played on other people's records, you know, and
Air Supply and
right, and Only Women Bleed, writing that classic tune, and
yeah.
you know.
That's cool. Now you were in New York during that time period. That would probably be 80s. Did you meet Roscoe then too?
Yes, that's when we met. When did we meet? We met in the mid to late 80s, but yeah.
So he was done with Joan Jett at that point?
Yeah, he was in the Delords.
Delords at that point. Okay, cool. I didn't know when your guys' connection started up, but I remember hearing his name back as far back as I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett. So
yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, we've been together a long time, and yeah, we've been married 32 years.
32 years. Fantastic.
So we should get some kind of award.
Yeah. Heck yeah. And in New York, where everybody's busy with everything. So you took you started taking off in the 90s with your Mary Lee's Corvette.
Right.
Give me a little background on how that project started, or the name of the project, or how you decided to go with that.
Sure. Well, I was frustrated that people weren't hearing my songs, and you know, I'd had a few covers, but you know, Amy Grant had recorded a song of mine, and other people, but I had so many songs that I loved that nobody was hearing. So this little club opened up in the East Village where I was then living, and I was introduced to the owner, and I said I'd like to play here, and he gave me a gig. So I had always had this vision of playing with a guitar player and an accordion player. This was before I was playing guitar. So we started doing these gigs at this little club called Chenet in the East Village, and you know, I just got such a great response, you know, pretty quickly. And I also loved what the musicians were adding to my songs in terms of arrangement. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I'd really like to do this under a band name, because I like what they're adding. It just feels more right to me. But I couldn't come up with a good name. The one I liked best that I came up with was the Lily Guild.
Wow.
But nobody really responded to that. And then one day I got this thing in the mail, like one of those publishers' clearinghouse mailings, you know, where they tell you you've won something. Mm-hmm. And I opened it up, and it said, Mary Lee Kortes, you have won $75,000 or a free Corvette. And then it had these 3 little pictures of a red, black, and blue Corvette, and underneath each one it said Mary Lee's Corvette, Mary Lee's Corvette, Mary Lee's Corvette. And I showed it to Eric. And Eric said, there's your band name. So this is back also when people were mailing flyers when they had a gig.
Yeah.
You'd print up some flyers and send them to your mailing list. So I made a flyer out. I cut out the 3 little pictures, and I made a flyer, and then from that point on we were Mary Lee's Corvette. And I still have that flyer.
Nice. The archives have a copy. Good.
Yeah.
Good deal. Yep. I love that.
Yeah.
Wow. What a fantastic way of grabbing the name and having it come to you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And over the years, I've got my wonderful internet pulled up here. I want to go through. I definitely self-titled record, that Billboard's 10 Best Album of the Year.
Right.
What year was that one?
97.
97. Okay. And then True Lovers of Adventure. I remember I came across, I believe, a cassette of that at Wagner's, as well as.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. Was it that or CD? I can't remember. That was when I was digging around for finding out who I was going to interview. You know. Love, Loss, and Lunacy. I tracked a copy of that down. Mm-hmm. And 700 Miles. Your publishing agency sent me a copy of that when we first met, as well as Blood on the Tracks, I think soon after, or a few years later, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about your recording processes through the years. Is every album different? Was it always I don't know, did you take Mary Lee's Corvette into different avenues in your own mind, or was because you led to the Dylan record, the Blood on the Tracks cover, which is live, but
right.
Give me a little bit about your records that your thought process through them all.
Okay, yeah, the first album was Eric's idea, because he before we were married, he'd known me as a songwriter. He'd heard my song demos. And then I started performing after we were married, and he realized, he said, I feel like I never actually heard your voice. Wow. Now that I've heard you live. He said, let's go into the studio and basically do just what you're doing live. We'll record it live to 2-track, which, for people who don't know about recording technology, that's how records were originally made. They'd hit record, everybody would play at the same time, everything was mixed onto 2 tracks, stereo, and that was your record. And you'd do the song however many times, and then the producer would say, we've got it, and you'd pick the best take, and that would be your record. So we went into the studio, and we just picked a bunch of songs, and we performed them all 5 or 6 times, live to 2-track, and when Eric thought we had it, we'd move on to the next song. And that was how that record was made. We chose the first one was just meant as like a promotional sampler.
Oh.
But then it was Billboard magazine got a copy of it, and a few radio stations did, and it just started to get a lot of attention. And so then it became a real record.
Was that through you? Sorry to interrupt. Was that through you by being diligent and getting the word out, or how did that happen? That Billboard and all that.
I started working with a publicist actually who sent it out.
Okay.
So incredible woman named Jill Richmond, and she got it to Billboard, and she got it to some radio stations, and then people just loved it, and I know nothing about what's good in terms of recording. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember sitting in the control room listening back to one of the songs and going, well, we tried.
Those are the early days. Heck yeah.
I didn't. And I had never done anything like that, because all my recordings had been song demos that were very programmed and just very different. This was live recording. I hadn't done that before. And then, the record gets on to, the editor-in-chief of Billboard. It's his 4th favorite record of 1997, followed by Paul McCartney or something, like crazy. and so that was the first record. And then I got a record deal, and we made a more traditional record where we did basic tracks. Again, it was a live band, and then overdubs. And then the record after that, was Blood on the Tracks was after that. Oh, so that was an interesting thing.
Oh.
Where I heard about this series in this club where I had done a lot of shows called Arlene Grocery. They had this series called Classic Album Night, where they would pick 3 classic albums and have 3 different bands perform them. And this was a night where they were going to do the band's Brown album, their second album, and After the Gold Rush, and Blood on the Tracks. Well, they had bands for the band's album and for After the Gold Rush, but nobody had agreed to do Blood on the Tracks. And I heard about it, and so I called them up and said, I want to do it, because I love that album so much. And they said, well, we hadn't thought about having a woman. I said, okay, well then I'm your man. Whatever.
Yeah, right.
So, I started practicing, and I almost canceled twice, because I just thought, I just sound like I'm imitating Dylan. This is going to suck. I am going to embarrass myself. I can't do it. But each time I went to the phone, I decided I didn't want to be a quitter. So I just kept practicing, and ultimately felt like I found my own way to do it. And the night before the show, I was out, and I ran into my friend Dennis, and he said, you're going to record it, right? And I said, oh my God, no, I'm probably going to suck. I'm not going to record it. And he said, you got to record it. It's Dylan. So the next night I was on my way out to the gig, and I thought, I should bring a DAT tape. That's back when People, and I didn't have a blank gap, so I grabbed a cassette.
Oh.
This is 2001, right?
Yeah.
So, and I handed it to the sound man and said, "Oh, will you record the show?" So that's how it got recorded.
Cassette.
And yeah, on a cassette. And then I started. There's more to the story, but I won't get into all the details. But then I was in between record deals, and at that point, had started writing the songs that ended up on 700 Miles. And I thought, well, I want to put something out, and my friend Amy Rigby said, well, why don't you record Blood on the Tracks? That's, it sounds like it was such a great night. And I mentioned it to my bass player, Brad Albetta. He said, but wasn't it the live aspect that was so great about it? And I had not even listened to the cassette yet. So I went back and listened to it, and I was like, oh my God, this sounds great. Oh, this sounds really fun.
Wow.
Maybe I should put this out. Then I flip it over and I get to side 2 that starts with Meet Me in the Morning. And the beginning of Meet Me in the Morning was cut off.
Oh.
Because the sound man at the club flipped the tape over, and we started the song before you could hit record. I said, oh, well, there goes that idea. I can't put it out without Meet Me in the Morning, or with half of it. Mm-hmm. So I'm have a rehearsal for some other gig, and I'm bemoaning this to my band, and the drummer said, oh, I was recording the whole show on my Discman. I've got it.
Is that Conrad?
No, it was, I hadn't worked with Conrad yet at that point. It was Diego Voglino.
Oh, okay.
So he gives me his recording, which, as you can probably imagine, is kick drum heavy. Because it was right by him, right? So if you listen to the recording knowing that, you will hear how loud the kick drum is at the top, because then I had an engineer meld the two together.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, so then I have my record. I press up, CDs at home on my computer. I have 10 of them, right? And I start selling them at shows. And I also sent out a few promotional copies to Vince Scelsa, Billboard Magazine, and this website called DylanCoverAlbums.com. And then it hits me, oh my God, I'm selling Bob Dylan songs. I probably need permission.
Oh, yeah.
So I called his publisher and said, you publish the Blood on the Track songs, right? And they said, yes. Why? I said, well, my band, we performed it and it got recorded, and I'd like to be able to sell CDs of it. And they said, oh, is this Mary Lee? They knew already. They know everything. Anyway, so one thing led to another, and then it came out on a proper label, Barn Inn Records. Gets 4 stars in Rolling Stone, just crazy. And it was on my version of You're a Big Girl Now. They had it on his homepage for, I think, almost a year.
I love that. So cool.
Long time. And I even got to open for him one time. So that was a nice little event.
You told me that came. I thought as you were telling me through Mary Lee's Corvette, your debut, that you recorded the Blood on Tracks after that, but it was after Love, Loss, and Lunacy that you did that then, right?
No, Love, Loss, and Lunacy was 2006.
Oh, okay. You're right.
Yeah.
I got you here. I'm looking at your pictures here, not the dates. But True Lovers of Adventure was the second album, right?
No, 4th.
Oh, I'm losing track here.
Because it was, or 5th, because it was Mary Lee's Corvette, True Lovers of Adventure, Blood on the Tracks, 700 Miles, Love, Loss, and Lunacy, and then Beulah.
Okay, so True Lovers of Adventure was number 2. I'm not crazy then. I did see that at Wagner's. Okay.
Well, I can't say you're not crazy. But.
That's for you to decide, like you'd write in your liner notes. That's up to you to figure out. Yes.
Right.
But I remember it got reissued, Blood on the Tracks, and I remember seeing you promoting it again.
Oh, right. When the book came out, yeah.
Yeah, and that's when I was like, I think I already had a copy, but I'm like, this is so cool how you're able to revisit that, and yeah, just what a time of your life.
Yeah.
And then you started the songs of Beulah Browley here.
Yeah. Then Beulah came to me.
Now, you obviously worked a whole life of working on those songs. When was the actual recording started? I'm sure you had demos done, but which I'm sure we probably hear someday, some of the demos. But since you were with Hal Wilner and you wanted to get it properly done, just tell me, when did that start? What year was that?
That was 2015, 2016 when we recorded with Hal.
Because I know I saw those last photos of 2016 when you said it was mastered, I believe, and you were listening to the playback or his order of what he thought they would flow in.
Right, his sequence.
Sequence, yeah. Mm-hmm. So did it take a year to record, or how did you go about the recording process for this?
Well, yeah, we did about 2.5 days of recording basic tracks. And then we did the overdubs over several months, and then mixing and mastering. So it was about a year, maybe a little. But we were talking about the project for a couple of years before we actually got into the studio.
With him, you and him.
And yeah, I would go to his studio, and we'd meet and talk about it. And then we didn't talk for a while. It kind of faded, and then I got a publishing deal at BMG Music, and the woman who signed me was old friends with Hal. So we got reconnected through her and decided and then crowdfunding. By then crowdfunding had become like a normal thing. Yep. So we decided to do that. And yeah, it was just a wonderful experience.
Where did you record it at?
At a studio called Kilgore Sound and Recording, which was actually Hal's studio was housed within that studio.
Okay. I was trying to gather that from what I read, and I'm like, it sounds like he's got a studio within a studio, and Kilgore Sound and Recording, which now has moved, but they were in a really historic building called the Film Building on 9th Avenue and 44th Street in Manhattan. So we just went, we decided to do the whole album there in the studio across the hall, which had a live room and a proper control room and a great engineer named John Kilgore, Grammy-winning engineer. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about working with him. Was he with Hal a part of the deal, or how did that work?
Well, Hal did projects with various engineers over the years, many different engineers. For this one, he felt that John would be great. And just because the nature of the music was very eclectic, and so that John really had the right sensibilities for it. And so that's what we did. That's incredible.
The producer kind of picks the microphones for the room and the sound and the song, and he picked the engineer based on the record.
Yeah.
That's freaking fabulous.
Yeah.
What a vision. I mean, the whole thing was so well envisioned for over that gestating period of wanting to record it with them, and the time you did get it done.
Yeah, and I wrote one song after, like 2 weeks before recording. I wrote a song because he said to me, we had I don't know how many meetings about this project, Hal and I. One day we were talking. I was in his studio, and we would also listen to music while we were there. And he said, we were talking about special guests for the album. And of course I wanted to have Joe, because he had played on the demo. So we had Joe Jackson, of course. He said, you should get like the last living member of some famous band. So basically, like, find a band where everyone's dead except for one person. And I'm like, okay, that's a concept, right? But that day, across the hall, Sheldon Hardick, who wrote all the lyrics for Fiddler on the Roof, happened to be working with John Kilgore. So I think maybe that's what made him, because he was this old guy. He was in his 80s at the time. I don't know. Anyway, and Hal was a big Jimmy Durante fan. He had like these Jimmy Durante puppets in his studio. So I'm thinking about old guys, right? And I'm thinking about Jimmy Durante. And I think within a few days, I watched Sleepless in Seattle, was rerunning on television. Mm-hmm. And the opening song to Sleepless in Seattle is Jimmy Durante singing Make Someone Happy. And if you think about that recording, the opening strings are these pizzicato strings that go bum, 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 ba-da, bum, 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 make someone happy, right? And I'm hearing that string line, and it just got embedded in my head. And then I wrote the song How Many Times, which is sort of starts with a similar line to that string, but it's over minor chords and it's just a little different. So that string line went through my filter, and I came up with that song How Many Times. So that was all inspired by that conversation. But we never got the old guy on the record, but we got that song.
The ethic of it, the ethos of it, what do you call it? The idea was there. Wow.
So it's like I get really stimulated when I'm working with other people and they say something and it sparks something in me, and that's how some songs get born.
The dream state almost again.
Yeah. Well, that's my whole thing about songwriting, is that I really believe in the unconscious mind as a bottomless well and an infinite source and resource for ideas, inspiration. And when things in your dreams make sense in their own way, they're always true in their own way.
Yeah.
And I read a line once, I don't know if it was Freud or where I read it, or Jung, but that the unconscious doesn't lie. In the unconscious is always speaking the truth, according to the person who is, within which that unconscious is encased, right? It's the truth.
Yeah. So
I feel like your most original ideas as a creative person can spring from there, because it's your own amalgam of the various inputs that come into you, right?
Yeah. When you're least expecting it.
Right, and then you put it together in your own way that nobody else would. And you don't control it; it just happens. Somebody else could have gone through all those same things and had it completely write a different song or not write a song. So it's just that's what I love about the act of creating. I just love that.
Beautiful. And listening to the songs of Beulah Riley, I thought immediately of there's a old timey feel, but there's a modern voice, a whole modern rock or folky thing that just works. It's like this could be recorded today, and just no one would know. It's because it's so perfectly timed with the time period of the life we live right now. And then I'm thinking to myself, Hal Wilner, that's the guy from The Raven with Lou Reed. That's just crazy how that album sounds a little similar to this. And I'm like, I had to go do some research in there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love the people. Are always hit and miss with those later Lou Reed records. To me, some of them are godlike, and I just thought The Raven was genius. And I see where he pulled in some, it's haunting with some of his productions.
Yeah. Well, I just loved how he felt about this project, and I think this is in my Hal story that's in the album's liner notes, that when he, I had these home demos that I had made that were pretty funky. I mean, really sparse and rudimentary, but a lot of the arrangement stuff is actually, I came up with a lot of horn lines and string lines and stuff that ended up on the album. But when he listened to that and read the story, I remember our first meeting, he looked at me and said, I've never seen anything like this. And I thought, Hal Wilner, like former hallucinogenic, guy who did those Disney albums. I mean, God, You've never seen anything like this? Okay, here we go. What a compliment,
Absolutely. I noticed too. He also said to you that one of the songs you recorded during the track playback or when he was putting together the track listing with your in the studio, that he said one of his favorite thing, if not the favorite thing he's done in his career. Right?
That was How Many Times.
Yeah.
That song that I was just talking about.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. He said this might be my favorite thing I've ever recorded.
And
then when we got to the end of the playback, he said, this could be a masterpiece.
Yeah. And he put that in the liner notes, and I'm like, what a moment of time, because a few years later during the COVID period here, we lost him.
Yeah. That was devastating. It still is.
Still breaks your heart.
Oh, yeah.
Such an artist on his own right.
And at the beginning of our conversation, you were talking about kindness and, musicians, creative people who are kind. Because, we're not all kind just because we're creative.
Right.
There are, absolute, dictators in the creative world as well.
Dicks and taters.
Yeah. But Hal was one of the kindest people I've ever met.
Oh.
Just,
it's like losing a piece of your heart.
Yeah.
That's wonderful to hear. Yeah. I've never got to speak with anybody that got to work with him. So, and I followed obviously through your posts over the years of how close he was to you.
Yeah.
It's like anything, and it's you like lose a piece of you when you lose friends like that.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep.
Well,
I am working on a new album, which hopefully I'll finish. And I wrote a song about him called In Time, and it's about how hard it is to accept that people are gone when they die. It's really hard to accept.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to hear that. It's going to touch my heart. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to mention some more stuff about Beulah Rowley here too. Do you know the name of her theater that her dad had, or is this a correlation with the theater that your dad had? Or
no, I never named it.
Okay. Because I'm like, her dad. I love how you put that together. It was your own story within that. Now that I'm getting to hear this. And those photos that were taken that are on the back of the vinyl, the Songbird Beulah and the posters for it, and the corner of this theater. Is this who was the artist that did you visionize this whole thing?
Oh, a brilliant artist named Stefan Spira. He also worked on the Love, Loss, and Lunacy album. Okay. He's done a lot of stuff for me. He's really, I think, a genius.
It's so laid out that it makes me fall into a dreamlike state just staring at it and then trying to piece it together. And when you do it, I mean, vinyl lovers, us Michigan vinyl lovers, like to hold it and smell it and live it and read it and see it. And this Record Store Day release just put me in a time capsule for the day. It's like, and that this artwork is just, the writing and the stories, it's just blows my mind.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad. I really appreciate that.
I'm so happy that you're still. I like, if this were mine, I'd be like you. I'd be like, I'll do promo for this album until the day I die. It's like,
oh, good.
You know what I mean? Like, it feels like this woman's voice is going to be on and on and on. And
I hope so.
It's just perfect.
Yeah, and for your listeners who don't have turntables, it's available on CD now, also through my website.
Cool. And did I read? I was flipping through the stuff today. Is it on digital now? Can you listen to it?
It is. It's not available worldwide, but you can get it now on Spotify and iTunes and
YouTube. Yeah. Is there YouTube videos for it or anything? Or
well, there are 2 official videos on my channel. So if you go to YouTube and just put in my name, You could probably put in songs of Beulah Rowley too. And
I've got to check those out.
Yeah, there's 2 videos. There's a video for Born a Happy Girl and a video for Green Sand.
Wow.
It features Joe Jackson. The video doesn't, but he's on the record. Joe Jackson.
That's so cool.
Green Sand. Yeah. And he's also on another thing on the album, the Lost and Found poem. He plays piano behind that.
Oh my goodness. That's incredible. So you also, let's slip this in. You did a book of your dreams on Bob Dylan.
I did. Yeah, I collected, there's some of mine, and then I also collected dreams that other people have had from around the world, because I had this, the origins of the book are that I had a recurring dream about Dylan, that we're at a restaurant in the West Village, a tiny little like basement restaurant with brick walls, no windows, candlelight, and we're sitting at this table and we never order any food. But he says 3 things to me. He says, Mary Lee, I think you're great. I love your music. Don't ever quit.
Oh.
So I had this, I'd have this dream about once a year, and then, I'd wake up that day and I'd walk around all day feeling high because Bob Dylan had just told me how great I am.
Yes.
And how it feels so real, right? And then one day it hit me, wait a minute, I can't be the only person dreaming about Bob Dylan. So I started posting about it and just putting the word out and collecting people's dreams.
Oh my
and, I got from all over the world, people dream of Bob Dylan. And eventually found a publisher for it. And yeah, there you have it. My book, Dreaming of Dylan, 115 Dreams About Bob.
What year did that come out?
2018.
2018.
And then I wrote a song to go with it called Dreaming of Him, and made a video. That's on my YouTube channel also. That's a wonder, I have to say. No Time for False Humility. I love this song. The video's great. Please go look at it, because the thing about when you make something, you have your reaction to it in the moment when you make it. You record something, you have your reaction when you first listen to it. But then if you don't look at it for a while, like a photograph, if you don't see it for a while, you come back to it and you go, oh, that's really good. So, I just looked at the video a few days ago. The video's 5-6 years old now. Like, wow, that's really good. It's really fun and entertaining. So,
I was going to ask you about that because I was like, is this a single that preluded this record? Or I couldn't tell because I haven't clicked on it yet, but I was peeking at stuff before we started our interview today. That's what that is. So that's
no, I wrote it to help promote the book. And my agent said, you should write a song to go with the book. So I sort of wove different images from the various dreams. So every line in there reflects some dream from the book.
Incredible. Did you do that while you were recording the record, the Beulah Rowley album, or just after? Or?
No, it was after,
Okay.
Because that was done in 2018. So the Beulah record was done in 2016.
Oh, I didn't know how long you had spent on the book, like if that was over a period of time too or not. But that's
well,
cool.
The book was over a period of time, but the song itself I wrote like right before the book came out. The book came out in November 2018.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Is that going to get to appear on that next record which is Where I Want to Head with the Conversation?
I'm not sure, since it's been out for a while. I don't know.
Might not fit.
I'm not sure it really fits with the next album.
I gotcha. How long have you been working on your new album?
I don't want to say.
I gotcha.
But I feel better about that, because I know I've recently had friends who said they were working on a record for 7 years or something, but it comes out and it does sound like it gelled and, works. So yeah, I'm comforting myself with that.
Well, you're an artist that has so many different timepieces within your art, whether it be the authoring or this legendary lady's music that you've dug out, or your own career, and you're living the busy life. I mean, as always surrounded with musicians and musicianship, as well as obviously reading and writing, and I'm sure that writing is always a continuous thing with you, right? Songwriting is like, it comes and it comes, right?
Yeah. I'm also writing a novel, so that's
really.
Oh gosh, that's a big job. I call it The Beast.
Oh, a novel. Cool.
I'm in my second draft, which is
Mary Lee.
So, I need a lot of luck, and
your fountain is endless, so your luck is going to come your way, girl. Always. I love what you do.
Thank you. Yeah. I keep giving myself assignments, in fact.
You do?
Like, ay.
So, do you have any shows ahead this year? Or any?
I do. I have one on Tuesday.
This Tuesday?
Okay. This coming Tuesday.
Okay.
Playing in New York, and the album's coming out in the UK and Europe later this year, so I'm hoping to get over there. And I've been really wanting to get back to the Ark in Ann Arbor, but I haven't played there in so long, and I'm having trouble reconnecting with them. But I would love to get out to Michigan and play.
Well, we're going to have to see what we can do about that. Tell us friends of the friends. And we got a venue here in Bay City, too, that a listening venue that's being formed through this podcast, actually. It's the old Dunlop.
Really?
The old Dunlop car building. It's in Bay City between the one-ways in the city. And we've one of the guys on my podcast, Mike Beatty, he's kind of revamping it to be a listening room, as well as a live room for like a St. Andrews Hall, kind of a vibey rock room, so two different things in one building.
Fantastic!
Yeah, we've held one show already there, and we got another one coming up with podcast guests, and we just sell tickets at the door and promote the hell out of it. And but it's a thing. It's
Look
just
at you!
Started. So,
wonderful. Yeah. That's great.
And last year I put out. Of you. Yeah, I'm just happy to be having an outlet for this music for everybody, and I think the history, is so. Here in Michigan, it's just we're right in the middle of everything, and I put out my Purpose album last year as my 6th record, concept album. And I was looking for so many various outlets to do things. And we had a pretty good year. I mean, coming out of COVID, it was starting to finally ramp up gigs again, and whether it be me solo.
It's taken time.
It is.
Yeah. But that's great. Maybe I should just come and do a tour of Michigan.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you ever come home and you know the plan, when you're going to be here, let me see what I can do, because I've been getting the word around for myself, and I'm starting to meet and greet people, and some people kind of know me through either the podcast or the music, and it's just one of those things where, we got to be able to hear this, and I'm looking forward to whatever you want to bring around when you do it. And you said you're possibly going to Europe too, eh?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, the record's coming out over there. So.
I love that. How cool. That's so cool. I know Conrad, your drummer, he's been back and forth with a few bands over the years, and he texts me every time he comes to town and puts me on the guest list to come see him. And he's such a great dude.
He's the greatest. He's on my gig on Tuesday, so I'll send him your regards.
Please do, yes.
Yeah.
I hope to see all you guys again and reconnect. And I think I may be out to see Adam this year. We're supposed to be back and forth.
Oh, great. Well, I'll have to see you when you get here then.
Yeah, I would definitely come. I will text you when we get to town, and we can reconnect if that's a feasible thing.
Absolutely.
Is there anything you want to add, Mary Lee, to the Songs of Beulah Rowley and this magnificent piece of Michigan music history?
I want to say thank you to my unparalleledly beautiful home state of Michigan. I'm so grateful to be from Michigan. I kind of went through a period, not everybody, but a lot of people do, where you have to sort of move away, go away, and I'm going to move away from where I'm from to establish my own identity, and blah blah blah, right? Mm-hmm. But then I came back to Michigan and realized how beautiful it is and wonderful, and just so happy to have grown up where and when I did. Michigan has created so much great music and art and put it into the world. I mean, just think about Motown, right? And how many great famous musicians are from Michigan. It's really, really incredible. And I'm just so proud of our state to be from there and grateful to it, and grateful that so many of my friends there have been so supportive of me all these years. And I'm really, really grateful to you and everyone who's been there for me like that. It's just a wonderful, beautiful thing.
Well, thank you so much for being part of the show and giving us your time, Mary Lee. I've adored you since I met you, and I thank you for all these years of friendships and keeping in contact, and your energy and artistic dreams and everything you've done. It's just such another cool thing to add to what musicians from the state have had to offer, let alone the world. I mean, you rock it, girl. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott. I really appreciate you having me and introducing your listeners to the songs of Beulah Rowley, because it is a project that's from deep in my heart. It's my baby. I do want it to have a long, long life. I think it can go on forever. And I really, really appreciate, more than I can say, that you're getting the word out and sharing it with all your people.
Absolutely.
But I want to tell you my little Michigan story that I've told a lot as I've toured around the world.
Oh.
About how when I moved from Michigan to New York City, and everybody from Michigan will understand this, and people asked me where I was from, and I said Portland, Michigan. And they said, "Oh, where's that?" And I would hold up my right hand, and I would point to the middle of my right hand. And people from New York would look at me and go, "Why are you pointing at your hand?"
All right.
Because, when you grow up in Michigan, from the time you can,
Yep.
understand anything, you're told that you're growing up in a state that's shaped like a mitten.
Yep.
And so everybody points at their hand to show where they're from.
Yep.
But, and you think that everyone's thinking this.
Yeah.
Not so. No, you go to New York City, people aren't thinking about the fact that Michigan is shaped like a mitten.
That's hilarious.
So don't point your hand.
It's what we do, man. Come on.
Oh, it's so funny.
I love that.
That was a hard lesson. Why is she pointing at her hand?
The state's gone on to add the other hand on top, kind of like the bridge with your thumb as the peninsula. Right. And it's like now it's a two-hand thing everywhere you go. And it's so funny because if you're not going outside of the state to talk about it, it's definitely a state thing. Where I'm from here, I point it between my thumb and my forefinger.
Yep.
That's so cool.
I know. I'm so naive. I thought everybody knows.
I did too, like honestly. Until you said that, I'm thinking, you're kidding me.
When I went to college, I went to Michigan State, and somebody was, in my class, he was from Virginia. So when people asked him where he was from, after he kind of caught on, he would hold up his right hand, but then point to his chest.
Oh, yeah, there you are. Oh, cool. The life we live of Michiganders.
Yeah.
Well, thank